Assalamu alaikum, Minahil, Zunaira.
Walaikum salam, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, ma'am. All well.
I am I'm doing well. You cannot be all well. Just going to make a little note here.
Okay, ma'am.
So when you say I am all well, now well is an adverb, right? And you can only be an adjective. So if you want to
Can you
use
lighten
well,
up? We can't say I'm all well strong in English.
it's actually really wrong in English. It's actually really um, it's not good English because when you who asked me this question?
Me, sorry.
Sorry, I don't know. Can you guys hear me well? Can you guys hear me well? Because well is an adverb.
Yes, we can hear you well.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, there was a little glitch from my side. So yes, I don't know who said that, but absolutely, I am well is incorrect because well is an adverb. So if you really want to use the word well, then you want to um, add a verb in there. So I am doing well, and now this is fine, right? Because my face not working. This is good because you're actually using a verb in here. So you need a verb, an adverb. Um, so this is so
Okay.
when
Siddiqa, sorry, ma'am, let me ask a question another way. If
uh-huh,
somebody asks me, how are you doing? And I
uh-huh,
simply reply, all well. Is that
no,
good enough? Is that
it's not good. It's not good. So if someone says, "How are you doing?" and then again the question will still be there. I'm doing well. All is good. So if anyone, I have to give a Bollywood reference here, but if anyone remembers the movie Three Idiots, there's a famous song in there, "All is well." I mean, it rhymes and it's good, but it's not, that's not correct English. And the whole point of them, they're actually mocking it. I'm not saying they don't know English. They're actually, it's they're doing a sarcastic parody on the way that everyone speaks in India or Southeast Asia. People say that a lot, and then not only do they say it a lot, but they also use the V instead of W. So when people do say it, they have that bit of an accent in there when they say all is well. But it's really, first of all, it's a W, and then secondly, um, all really can't be well. So in correct English, you want to be good, like, so basically, how are you? And when you're very little and you learn the initial salutations, you say, how are you? I'm fine. I mean, it's kind of boring and it's said enough times, but okay. Walaikum assalam, Junaid, and just saw the chat box open up. I hope that's clear. I hope that and if you've been saying it for a long time, then then that kind of I'm kind of making you unlearn something you already know. But absolutely, it's not, because well is you do something well, right? So, oh, you did really well on your exam because you have a verb in there. But well is and all is well is definitely not okay. It's an adverb. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm just gonna have a look to see if we have Zilihuma Nasra. You're here because I want to begin with the question that you asked in the group. So I will actually begin with the first sticky note that we see over here, which says not only dot dot dot, but also. So I used this expression in someone's comment in um, in our workshop chat. So I just want to start with this. This is a really good expression when we want to. Um, this is a clause. exercise. So if anyone wants to, I mean, some people like to know what grammar point I'm doing. There's really no one chapter I can put this in, but it's basically clauses, right? So you're putting two clauses together that emphasize one clause. So if I say, not only is, not only do I think Pakistani food is delicious, but so do all Canadians. So what am I emphasizing? So basically, my expression that I'm using, I got to split it up. And here, instead of using but also, I can also do but so do. Like it's not only, um, it's perfectly okay to do that. Uh, Here, I split it up like this. That's why you said you had a question. So I want to put this up here and I want to um, give an example so then I can open it up for you. So you can go ahead and tell me, you can unmute yourself and ask me your question from the group.
Yeah, like I was thinking like where we use did, or like you because you told me like I should use did, right? Like in that sentence. Like let me go over there and read the sentence. I'm
Uh-huh.
sorry.
Uh-huh.
Because I wrote here like I'm sorry, I'm taking
Ah, no,
time.
no, no, don't be sorry. I see it. It says, not only did I feel, right?
Yeah, and not only did I feel,
Uh-huh.
and I said before, like for your correction, I wrote not only I felt, right? So I didn't
Uh-huh.
use did. So
Uh-huh.
I was confused that where should we use did instead of like
Yeah.
like past
Mm-hmm.
tense?
Okay. Very good question. Okay. So I'm going to give you like two sentences that we'll put together. So I felt tired. I felt frustrated, right? And basically, let's say I had those two feelings. I want to put those together, right? I want to put those together. I'm going to say, not only, now here, because I am reversing the order, I'm doing an inverse order of um, my sentence. I'm making it the subject. So I'm making it the, I'm not, um, I'm trying to say this in a non-grammatical way to make it more something that you can actually apply, right? So let me make the sentence first. Not only did I feel tired, but, and you don't have to say, but also I felt, or I also felt. I can just say, but also frustrated. This would be a combination of both those feelings. Now, what I'm doing is I'm the expression, the way it goes, and there really is, unfortunately, there really isn't a much of an explanation to the expression, but the way the expression goes is, not only this happened, but this happened. Not only, uh, and then actually, I'm going to give you one more auxiliary too. Um, I was happy and I was excited. I will do the same sort of a thing that I did there. I'm going to say, not only was I happy, but also excited. So here I'm doing with both the um, auxiliaries, I'm doing the same exact thing. I'm putting did over here, and then I'm doing it with was. So you can see that when I use the expression, oops, I forgot this. So when I use this expression, not only da 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 da, but also da 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 da, then I'm I'm putting that auxiliary at the beginning because that's the way the expression goes. So that is the way that the expression goes. And by the way, this is a very, it's not only a spoken English thing, it's a great one for writing as well. But so you see, unknowingly, I also did that over here, right? I also did it at the beginning over here. So not only do I think Pakistani food is delicious, but so do all Canadians. So it's it is the way the expression works. When we want to put those two ideas, any two ideas together, and emphasize कि खाली ये नहीं था, ये भी था, right? So, or सिर्फ ये नहीं था, ये भी था. So then instead of saying not only I feel, I say I have to emphasize whatever auxiliary would take place. In this one, the auxiliary that would take place is a verb auxiliary, right? The verb auxiliary is do, and this was mostly the adjective auxiliary, which is the verb to be. So I need to place that before. So so another way of making I'm not changing the expression, but a way to remember how the expression works would be not only auxiliary, right? I mean, if I was reinventing this expression, I would make it like that just for anyone to remember. So it's not only whatever auxiliary. So if you're using a verb, you're going to say not only do I like, or not only did I feel, but then I'm also going to if I'm using an adjective or describing a situation, I'll say not only was I tired, but also exhausted. So depending on if I'm using the auxiliary to replace, not really replacing, I'm adding. I don't want to say replace, because when we make a question, also we need our auxiliary. When we make a negative, we need an auxiliary. So this expression is kind of making a negative sentence, because every time we make a negative sentence, we need an auxiliary, right? So I'm actually going to put that down here. Every time we make a negative sentence, we need an auxiliary, right? So, for example, um, I like apples, and then the negative sentence will be I don't like apples. I also don't like carrots. So now, if I want to make a sentence with not only, I'm kind of making a negative sentence, right? So not only do I not like apples, but also not carrots. So not only is actually a negative sentence, even though um, yeah, I mean, I guess that would be the best explanation, because it's a negative sentence, and in all negative sentences, we have to use auxiliary. Is that clear, Nasra, or did I make it more
Yeah,
confusing?
yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Oh, you're
Thank you.
most welcome. I don't want to leave you hanging and make it more confusing. So, anyone else have a question about this, or if you feel like I've left you more confused than understood? I'll take the silence to mean no or yes, either or surprise.
No, I
So,
think
yeah,
like
yeah.
the way you explained, I don't like that is really good.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Okay, perfect.
Hi,
So, Assalamu alaikum, Rabia.
Walaikum Assalam, ma'am.
You were saying something. You got. I think I interrupted you.
No, nothing,
Okay, so
ma'am. As silence always means yes.
silence. Well, yes. That is a topic for a very different workshop. Perfect. I do agree. I do agree. Okay, so if anyone does not have any questions about this, and if you do, you can always come back to it, right? I mean, it's not like, you don't have to say everything right now, because if something comes back to you even after we're done the workshop, you know how to contact me. Please ask me. I would be happier to explain this all over again many times, but I would prefer you to use these expressions than to be scared and never to use expressions that make you sound better at speaking the language. So the next two little stickies that I have here are although, even though, and though, and in spite of, despite. The one thing that's common between all five of these expressions is they have the same meaning, okay? In the sense that when we talk about I'm going to put it. It's my first time using, I usually use a whiteboard on Teams, so it's my first time using it here, but I guess we'll work it out. So although, even though, and though all have the same meaning. Okay, so they have the same meaning. The only difference is that even though is a little stronger, and I will explain, and though goes at the end of a sentence and is only used. I cannot type and talk. I really can't. It's only used in spoken English. Okay, I'll just put it right over here. So this is the difference between that. Otherwise, the three have the same meaning. The meaning is the same. What is the meaning? They're used for contrasting ideas, right? So if you have two ideas that are contrasting, I also like to call them, they are all the opposite of because. When we use because is for reason, right? Which is, everyone knows because. Kyunque. So when we have a reason why you do something, right? So why are you here today? Because you want to improve your English, or because you have nothing better to do? There's a reason why everyone is here today. So there's always a reason for because. When you do something and the reason doesn't match, it goes contrasting to the reason, then we use although, even though, and though. It's basically the opposite of because, right? So if it is very, very cold, and I'm not wearing a sweater outside, then I can say, why are you not dressed warmly even though it's so cold outside? Like, it's going against the reasoning, right? Um, okay. So first I want to do although, even though. Though is my favorite because though is something that non-native speakers or not first language speakers are a little bit hesitant to use. So I'll give you an example. So I'll say, so I can say, although the Beatles, the band, are so old, they are still so popular. Just going to write that again. And then I can just substitute although. I can just use even though. Now, remember I said although, even though is a little bit stronger in speaking. Okay, so when you're speaking, because we enunciate or we intonate a little bit stronger on that. So I would say, even though the Beatles are so old, they're still so popular. That's it. I mean, the meaning is still the same. Whatever my idea is to say is still the same. Nothing really changes. But if I'm speaking, I'm not going to break down although. I don't do that. That's not going to be very cool. But if I want to be like, even though, like, I'm about to tell you something very contracting, right? Contrasting, that I'm going to say, even though the Beatles are so old, they're still so popular. The meaning is the same. But if I want to do that dramatic emphasis, then even though would be that emphasizing one. And then in spoken English, and this is actually really interesting because a couple weeks ago, I was doing this with one of my workshops at my work. And the last one, the though at the end, all my French students found it so difficult. And their question was, what if we decide never to use this? So I hope you guys don't ask me the same question, because don't ever, like, if you find an expression in English and you find it's not coming natural to you, don't decide never to use it. Don't just give up on life right away so easily. Instead, challenge yourself to use it. And then you always have a place where you can safely practice with me. like that WhatsApp group that we have, it's a very safe place for, because everyone is, first of all, no one's going to judge you if you make a mistake there. No one should, and no one does. Everyone's so nice in there. And so it's a very safe place to practice. And if you feel even so shy to do it in there, which you shouldn't, then you can also message me privately, but challenge yourself. So here's how I would do it, like this, right? The Beatles are so old, they're so popular, though. Here, I'm going to do a dramatic pause. Okay, and that's what I wanted to kind of say. This is text color. Go to red. Oops. Okay, never mind. I thought. Okay. Dramatic pause. Okay. So the Beatles are so old. They're so popular, though. This is where how I'm going to say it. How I say it is very important. Drop intonation. Like this, right? So the Beatles are so old, like, and I say I drop my intonation. I'm about to say something. When I say that, when I drop my intonation, something is about to come up, right? So I'll say the Beatles are so old. They're so popular, though. All of them have the same meaning. Although, even though they all have the same meaning, but the way we use them is just different. Even though in spoken is going to make a difference, in written it doesn't really make any difference at all. And though goes at the end. Any question about although, even though?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Rabia.
Ma'am, would it be wrong using the although or even though along with but? Like I've seen some people using, for example, even though the Beatles are so old, but they are still so popular. Would it be wrong?
Exact. That would be wrong, and it's a very, very common. You're absolutely right. People do that all the time, and a lot of my students, what they were doing, what they were trying to do was this. Um, the Beatles are so old, but they are so popular, though, right? And this is wrong. You don't need the but. The whole point of doing the contrasting word in there, the whole point is to use that one word that helps you contrast the idea. So why do people do that? Because but is the most elementary word that we learn, right? And but, or we learn those, so we're very comfortable with them. So we're so tempted to just put that in there. So exactly, it's not correct. It doesn't change what you want to say. I mean, baat to wahi hoegi. You will still make sense, but it's not correct English. No, absolutely not.
Ma'am, but these both sentences have same meaning. Like the Beatles are so old, but they are so popular. And the same goes with the even though the Beatles are so old, they are still so popular. So what's the difference between even though all?
Um, but is lekin, right? And if you want to say the Beatles are so old, but they're so popular, it's fine. But then you don't put even though and though. Like you don't want to use a contrasting idea and but, because but already is a contrasting idea, right? Like the but means lekin, and lekin is a contrasting thing to say. Like if I say it's so cold, but it's so beautiful. I'm contrasting the idea. You just don't need two contrasting ideas together. It it is just, it's not a, it doesn't it doesn't make you a bad speaker, but it definitely doesn't make you, it doesn't make you a good speaker for sure, right? So it doesn't sound right. It's similar to what at the beginning when I asked someone, I said, "How are you?" and they said, "I am all well." And I said, "You can't be all well because there's no verb in there. You have to be an adjective. You cannot be an adverb." right? So for that reason, you can only have one contrasting verb. People do a lot of things, right? So it's like if we start learning English about how people speak English, that's not really going to go well. But you want one contrasting verb. Basically, that's the purest definition that I can give you. That you have to have one contrasting word, and but is also a contrasting word.
So is it wrong to have two contrasting verbs, or is it unnecessary to have two contrasting?
Um, it's both. If you are doing an if you're writing, if you're talking about written, then it's wrong. Then I would say no. Like if I was correcting your written exercise, even if it's um um something business related or academic related, I would say no. I would put a cross. I would say this is wrong. You have two contrasting words in there. In spoken, I wouldn't say it's wrong, right? Because I mean, uh, it's not necessary. Then I would say कि ज़रूरत नहीं है. It's you're losing the effect of it, right? Because when you're using a contrasting verb, you're doing so. Imagine if even if you're speaking and you're trying to stop and say, but you pause, right? Like when you're doing a speech or when you're speaking to someone, you pause when you do the contrast. You go, yeah, it's good, but right? But then you don't want to add all the contrasting words in a line. Well, the weight is lost. Like you lose the effect of it. The effect is completely gone then. So I would say it's both. It's not necessary, and it's also not right. So it's not the same mistake as well, for example. It's not a grammar mistake because that I would say is wrong. वो गलत है, you don't say that. But this would be like, it doesn't, it takes away from the weight of what you're trying to say. The weight is gone. If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Sorry, I was
And
just thinking in my head that sometimes in certain languages, these double contrasts, certain languages use this to put an emphasis on something, but in
Mhm.
English, it's wrong, right? So,
Exactly.
mm,
Exactly. When we want to put emphasis, right? So, for example, the word that we use, absolutely, absolutely is, completely, totally, right? And then we can say a negative word after that. We can say not, right? So that is that's I'm even for emphasis, I'm using a positive and a negative to make the emphasis. I'm saying absolutely not. Can I go to the mall? And if my answer is absolutely not, I'm saying positive, negative to make that emphasis. But two negatives are not going to make the emphasis. And two positives are also going to lose the emphasis. Like, for example, if I say um, this book is very good. Yeah, okay. So I'm using very and I'm using good. I'm using it for an emphasis. Of course, it's correct. But imagine if I say it's very great, it doesn't even sound right anymore, right? Because great is already so strong. Great means very good, and now you're saying very good, very very good, and that's just like it loses the emphasis. It actually it goes counterintuitive than what you want to say. It actually sounds even sarcastic. So, for example, if you say that something is great and I don't really agree with you and I want to be sarcastic, then I'm going to say, "Oh yeah, very great." You know that when I say that, well, hopefully you know that I'm not agreeing with you. I'm not saying waki zabardast hai. I'm actually being very sarcastic and I'm saying, "Oh yeah, very great." And I'm going to pause and I'm going to say it with a tone of voice because that's I'm being sarcastic. I do not agree that it's good. But if you say this book is great, then I can say, "Oh yeah, it's really great." I'm using a different word. I'm not saying very. I'm saying really, which is just an intensifier. It's not a positive or a negative word. It's just an intensifier because really could go with something negative or positive. So I'll go back to what you said that in some languages, um, um, yes, if you double up, that it doesn't lose the effect. But in English, and some other languages, if you double up, that actually it's not as effective anymore then.
I can give you one compliment right now. You teach English.
Say it again, your
as-
voice.
I'm saying that you teach English as if it's a form of an art, right? For you, this language, English is an art. I'm talking to Angrez in my professional career for the past 21 years, and they say these things. And I'm saying, कि यार, they didn't even go to English medium school. वो अंग्रेज हैं. At least they should get it right.
100%, 100%. I mean, I sometimes I hear people, and I'll give you another example that bothers me so much that it's actually, my husband says this, don't let it bother you, but it bothers me even more. But people in New York, okay, so as we know that New York is in America, which is an English speaking place, and if any Angrez in New York doesn't even know that any other language exists, they're very ignorant, they're very American, they don't know, and this is how they speak English. They go, he don't do that, and खुल्लम खुल्ला कहते हैं, and this goes under my skin. I cannot handle it, and I have to really bite my tongue and my cheek when I'm there, because come on, haven't we learned this in our basic English? I mean, I can pick a child from a village in Pakistan and they will know that he doesn't do that is the correct one. But they are so kulam kula, they say, oh, he don't do that. And so then it's become this big snowball effect that everyone speaks like that. And then I would hate to teach over there, because how can I, a brown person, stand up in front of a class in New York and say, no, this is wrong, this is not grammatically correct? They'll be like, what are you talking about? The whole entire city says this. So this is exactly what you're saying, and it's like, and it becomes a snowball effect. And now with the evolution of the wonderful social media world, people do lots of stupid English stuff. And actually, when I teach you guys English, I'll be very honest with you, I don't teach you English to sound like robots and academic and monotonous. I teach you English that you can still be very cool and very laid back and you don't have to sound like a robot, but still you have to speak correct English, because like sometimes correct English can make you sound really boring and very professor like. That's not the English I'm telling you. But this is just basic mistake, right? Like, he don't do that. Like, I mean, come on, everyone knows that that's wrong. So that's very elementary level English. But you're right. The Gore are on a different world completely. I also want to show you in spite of and despite. A common mistake, again, that a lot of Gore will make, okay, is put it over. Okay, a lot of people are going to make is in spite of, two words, and a mistake would be despite of. Okay, so the correct is despite. There's no of after despite. And a very common mistake that will be made internationally would be despite of this. There's no of after despite. In spite of this is thanks, Zanetta. It's in spite of and despite. Now, what does it mean? Similar idea, similar thing as even though we're still contrasting, still a contrasting idea. But something very interesting that you need to know is after the words in spite of, in spite of and despite, we need to add either, number one, we either put a noun or we put a gerund. Now, it's not important to know what a gerund is, but a gerund is basically a verb in the ing form. So this is very important. So, in spite of being a Gora, he doesn't speak English well. this is where we use well. You see this? Well. Why well? Because I'm talking about speak. I'm talking about a verb. I'm defining that. So this is where I use well. And I'm putting in spite of being. Being is the gerund. Okay? Being is a gerund. The same sentence I can say, despite being a Goda, his English is awful. Because, you know, I know that when you're not in an English country, you think that people, they just speak perfect English. They don't. In spite of and despite being. We also can add a little expression to both of these, and we can say, in spite of the fact that he is a Gora, da 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 da, same thing. And despite the fact that he is, same thing. So we can add this expression, the fact that. It's a very common thing to add. It doesn't really make you any smarter or cooler or better. It's just, if you want to say it like this is how you would say it. But what's important to remember is that after using in spite of and despite, you want to use either a noun or a gerund. So let's do a little exercise, okay? Just a small exercise. The sentence I put above there, I wrote, although the Beatles are old, they are very popular. I want to make this sentence using despite. The same sentence, the same idea, using despite. Anyone can unmute and try helping me do this.
I can't see the sentence. I see the tag Al-Mawrid Institute in front of me.
Sorry, I didn't catch the voice at all. Again?
I can't read the sentence because the tip that says Al-Mawrid Institute is in front of it. It's your cursor.
Oh,
Yes,
is it better now?
serving.
Yeah.
Can you guys see?
Yes, we can see now.
Okay. Do you want to try, Rabia?
Despite the fact that Beatles are old, they are very popular.
Excellent. Now, this is an excellent thing that you did because this is the one that actually people feel more comfortable with, right? Despite the fact that the Beatles are old. But let's do without the fact that. This is perfect. Rabia, your answer is perfect. But how can I do it without the fact that?
Can I try?
Of course.
Despite,
Okay, Rabia, you go on.
no, you go. Sorry.
Okay. Um, Despite being very old, the Beatles are very popular. This is how it's coming to my mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Despite being very old or just old, they are very popular. Absolutely. Exactly like this. So you figured out that the verb is are, which is the verb to be, and you put it in the ing, and that is very good. And Rabia, your sentence is also very good. It does not make either of the sentences better. Neither of them are better. But the second one is a bit tricky to remember because it doesn't come natural to us right away. So then, but that's the way it is. They're both excellent, correct answers. That's very, very good. I heard someone, I can't really see who's, I'm really not good with technology, guys. But I heard somebody say, Rabia, you go on, right?
I was the one, and I think I made the mistake again.
So what is the correct way of saying this?
You carry on, I think.
You go
Carry
first.
on? No, I want you to use go. I want you to say, Rabia, you go.
Just go, I guess.
No, just go means jao yahan se.
You go first. Would that be correct?
That would be okay. I want the best one. I want a preposition here. You go first is very not old, but very um Okay, I'm just gonna say old. It's older English. It's not the more spoken and the more native sounding English.
Sounds about right if you consider my age. In my era, it was fine. Okay, I'm excited now. What's the correct answer?
The answer is ahead.
You go ahead.
You
You
go
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 ahead.
ahead,
ahead.
right?
You go ahead.
Uh,
I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. Reason number one is because ahead is a preposition and go ahead is a verb plus preposition, which is a phrasal verb. And you know how I feel about phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are so annoying, so frustrating, but they're so amazing because by using a phrasal verb, you sound better and more competent in English. So phrasal verbs are the way to go. Secondly, it avoids any ambiguous meaning behind it. If you say, go first, and let's say you're not saying it, let's say you're saying it very, very nicely, so फिर तो कोई मसला नहीं है, but let's say you're writing it or you're typing it, especially nowadays on like chat or WhatsApp or something, right? God forbid, people are waiting to get offended, right? So if you say that, that could be taken as very, very wrong. That could be taken as tanzia. So, Nini, पहले आप कर लो, पहले आप कर लो. It just sounds very tanzia. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab some water. 1 second. Yes, I'm sorry. So, do you know what I mean? It if you're just speaking to Rabia and Rabia knows you and Rabia knows that everyone knows each other over here. You're all very nice people. No one's being sarcastic. It's fine. You can even say, um, go first, and even if you just said, okay, no, you go, it's fine because I mean, Rabia will understand. कि वो ये नहीं कह रही है कि just जाओ यहाँ से, right? She's not saying that, but go ahead just makes you like the first thing that I said. It makes you sound more well versed. It makes you sound more competent because phrasal verbs make you sound that. That is what happens when you use a phrasal verb, and there's no ambiguity in it. There's nothing ambiguous about that because it cannot be taken as sarcastic or something. And like I said about WhatsApp or just typing it out, this cannot be taken wrong. But go first or go and go on can be taken as they can have multiple meanings that maybe you're not even wanting to say those. Is that clear?
Yeah, I get it. Thank you. And I think I will remember for the next time, inshallah.
Okay.
thank you, Miju.
Some mistakes we can never forget.
I was about to give you a compliment, but now I'm going to do it in the form of a question because I'm not sure if it would be
Please do.
correct
Please
English.
do.
So in computer science, when somebody writes a good code, right? So the way I express it in front of the executive management is that his code is not only good, it's ridiculously good, right? So is it the correct usage of the term if I say that, hey, your English or your teaching style or XYZ capability is ridiculously good? Is common English or are there better ways to say
So
it?
so it's a very what's the word I'm looking for? What do we say? I'm literally this is not a rhetorical question, but what do we say when there's Jan Pehchan? What's the word in English? I'm totally blank right
Know
now.
how, know how.
Know how. Thank you.
Acquaintances.
Yes. Totally went blank over there. So if there is a general know-how, then it's okay. So it depends, right? I mean, if you said it to me, I would definitely take it as a compliment, and my answer would be, "Oh, thank you," right? But if my colleague, who I don't really work with, who I see only on Christmas parties once a year, if he says to me, "That's ridiculously good," I would be very questionable. Like that's a little bit. I wouldn't know if it's a compliment or insult. So it's all about this is because you're using a negative word but you're using it in adverb form to be like, this is crazy good. This is very it's a very good way of saying it. It's a very advanced English way of saying it. But to know that this could be taken wrong if there is not a good general know-how. If you're working um, with English speaking people, then it's going to be understood. But just so you know that, as long as it's in spoken English, and it's like that, and by spoken English you can also be writing it. Spoken English means not professional formal business report English, or not academic essay. That's what I mean. You could still be writing spoken English too, right? You can, like, when we talk to each other in WhatsApp groups and everything, we're all using spoken English, right? We're not talking as if we're writing a business report. Currently, a lot of, actually not even currently, in the past many years, a lot of negative words, so-called negative words, are being used in affirmative contexts. For example, my daughter, she tells me it's only for her generation, I'm not allowed to use it, but she uses the word slay. And if you haven't heard of it, then I'm so happy, because it took me, I hadn't heard of it either. Okay. So I hope I'm not the only one. Slay originally means to kill a dragon specifically, right? So it's such a random word to use, right? And it's a verb. But now in 2023, and it's very, very common, it means it can be a verb or an adjective, to be super awesome, like beyond awesome, great. So you can say you slayed, which is a verb form, like what you did was just so next level, amazingly awesome, good, or ridiculously good, like you said, right? Or you can just comment, that slay, or just use the word slay, that slay, or slay. And that is used as an adjective, and it basically is to describe something that is, wow, that's slay, or that's just amazing. So I mean, when I first heard it, you could imagine I'm like, I don't even know if this is I don't even know where it's coming from and why this is like gay, because I only know the original meaning. It means to kill a dragon. So things change. In the 90s, I don't even know if maybe I'm being too old when I say 90s, but 90s was just 5 years ago, right? So in the 90s, we had a word called wicked. Okay, and now, as you guys know, wicked means evil, right? The original meaning is evil or whatever, right? But then in the 90s, when I was, in my, between my early teens, so like 94, 95, in my early teens, wicked was supposed to be, it meant awesome, cool, like slay, like now the word slay is. Um, am I throwing anybody off here? Like, are you guys following me? Like, do you
Yeah, we
see
are
what I'm trying
here.
to?
Yeah, totally
Okay.
following you.
Okay, so you see what I mean, right? Like a word has a completely, I mean, to kill cannot mean awesome. Like, when did that happen? But it happened, and who cares? But that's how it is right now, because that's a whole generation right now, is the entire generation Z is using this. And I've seen it more than in the amount of times I want to see it, but that's what it is right now. But when I was great, and I cannot say कि ये क्या बात हुई, because if I look down myself, then when I was in my teens, I was doing the same thing. I was using wicked to mean something very cool. And it was only an adjective, of course, but that's exactly how it was. So, I mean, this is something that, so when you say something like, that's ridiculously good, it's, um, it's fine. I mean, it's absolutely fine. But when we use this kind of slang, I don't want to say street language, because I know that in Pakistan, India, when you say street language, it's considered a negative thing. In this part of the world, when we say street language, it's fine. It's not buri zuban. It's the casual language that we speak. It's not the language that we use to speak to the judge. It's this language that we speak as laymen. Um, so it's fine. It's fine to use that, but as long as आप कहाँ बात कर रहे हो, the big difference that exists in English is not about tamiz and batamiz, right? Because in Urdu, if you say tu and aap, that's different. And in most languages, we have tu and aap, right? We have it in most languages. In very few languages, we don't have tu and aap, and English is the king of those languages. So then English is differentiated between uh, I don't want to say casual and formal. Um, I want to say I want to say casual and formal. So that's what I want to say, but I don't want you guys to think that I want you guys to speak in formal. I hate when people speak in formal English. It's really not fine. But casual give you different levels hote hain. How casual are you? Are you speaking to your friend? Are you speaking to your teacher? Um, most of you will, when you guys speak to me, you call me ma'am. And I love it. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But in Canada, for example, if if my student came up to me and said, "Ma'am," I would probably have to give them some sort of detention or some sort of a penalty for saying that because I know that that person is being very rude and very sarcastic with me. Can you imagine that culture difference? It's very, very tanzia in Canada. I do not take it. I know what you're saying it as, but you cannot imagine like that. Like my students, when you guys speak to me, and when my other students speak to me, they will call me. They will even use my first name. I've had most of my students in high school upwards, not elementary, but high school up to college and even above that, post secondary. They just say my name. They don't say Mrs. They don't say ma'am. Um, they just say my name. So I don't agree with it. I think that there should be a level of respect when there's a teacher, but yeah, that's my point of talking about the difference between in English. And this is why when I correct some of you in the group and say, "Hey, this is really old English," मतलब ऐसे कोई बोलता नहीं है, because it makes you it because the goal of you to be here in my workshop and on the WhatsApp group is to sound more competent and sound more comfortable and be more comfortable in English. So that's why that's when I correct you. That's what I try to say. So sometimes I'll tell you nahi ye galat hai, but sometimes I'll tell you that's not really how we say it in English. Does anyone have any questions? We have about 4 minutes.
I will ask one question, but at the
Yes, please.
end, ladies, go ahead first. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. I said go ahead.
Not go away.
Not go away. You may find it funny, but I seriously want to know. I would be. I'm very curious. आपने कैसे सीखा था? एक होता है vocabulary. A lot of people have very good English vocabulary, and it has a lot to do with memory as well, right? How often do you read and stuff like that. But एक होता है, but the one thing that impressed me about Jack, Javed Ahmed Gandhi, is his understanding of the philosophy of the language. So the way you are teaching these things, right, makes me feel that it's not that you have mere understanding of the grammatical rules. Many people know that. A lot of people know that. That's not what. Okay, you know that, but that's not how I would define you as a teacher. You kind of understand the philosophy of the language. So when you didn't know all of these things, आपने कैसे सीखा?
So right now, I'm 43 right now, okay? And the reason I'm telling you this is because the next part is going to shock you. I was, I think, 28 when I first took my first grammar class. My first language is English. And in Canada, we don't learn grammar in school. Can you believe it? Like there's no grammar taught in school at any age. The only subject that you learn grammar in Canada is French. there's no grammar taught in English, and unless and until you go into teaching grammar. So I knew when to use present perfect and simple past and the second conditional, whatever, but I didn't know what it was called until I decided that I want to teach English language. So when I decided to teach English language, I had to actually go take a course and then pass the course and get certified. So that's when I actually learned. And I was like, oh, acha isko ye kehte hain. I know why it's wrong. I can explain to you why it's wrong without knowing the name of what it is called, but I didn't take any grammar lessons. So I think that to answer your question is I've only been good in one subject in all my life. And this is recorded, and my Ammi is going to be listening to this. I know it. She always listens to all my recordings. And my Ammi used to get so angry at me when I would tell her I want to be a teacher when I grow up, an English teacher. And now she's so proud of me. So this is not to tell you guys don't listen to your Ammi. Please listen to your Ammi. But now my Ammi is very happy with me. So I don't know what lesson that we learned from this. But my only subject I was ever good at was English. And I have such a passion about English. And I also come from a family in which my dad and my grandfather are very, very they're very into languages. So my grandfather had a couple degrees in languages, and my dad is very, very competent in English, Urdu, and Arabic. So I think I have that a little bit in my blood, but then also I'm very, very passionate about languages, and I think that's the reason why. But it's not because I learned it at school. My first language is English. I never lived in Pakistan ever in my life, which is not something I'm proud of. I love Pakistan so much, but I don't associate Pakistan with my home. Pakistan for me is just a place I went for my vacations once in a while. So that is to answer. I have a passion for it, and that's it. Um, I think Shiraz bhai, I think that my passion for English is how you are passionate about Quran, because the way you know your Quran, and how you can really, like, you can take one word in one ayat and you can do 1 hour on it, and you can and even then it doesn't seem enough for listeners and for you. I think that's how I feel about English language itself.
Okay, very, very quickly, I will give two comments. The day I will get as passionate about Quran as you are about English, I think I will develop much better understanding of Quran. Secondly, after attending a few of your lectures, it's for the youngsters. Now I realize why I'm still single. It's because of the selection of words, which I thought to be correct. So guys who want to have good future, and girls as well, have this teacher hold on to her tight, learn your vocabulary and grammar well. Otherwise, you will end up being like me. Thank you very much. I think that was fair.
Thank
To
you,
make everybody
everyone,
laugh.
so much. It was a lovely, lovely class. And if someone could tell me when I close this meeting, can this whiteboard be shared with you guys?
ये Google Meet का whiteboard है.
I'm sorry.
Is it Google Meet's whiteboard?
No. This is it's by Zoom.
I haven't used one. But I think it can be shared. For sure, it would be. It can be able to
Okay.
share.
So I will check that out, and I know it's going to get saved. I know that for sure. But then I will figure out how to do that, and I will share this whiteboard in the WhatsApp group, so everyone has these notes
I
with
think
them.
generally what happens with Google Meet and Zoom and Slack of all such tools, when they provide this whiteboard functionality, they provide you with a public link that you can share with everybody else. Just like
Okay.
Google Drive's link, right? So इसमें
Okay.
कहीं ना कहीं option होगी. I will let you know soon.
Okay, ठीक है. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Brilliant lecture. Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, and I'll be in touch with you in the group. Until then, Assalamu alaikum.